My name is Daniel and I'm a chef not just by trade, but by passion. Food isn't just something I make, it's something I create, something I perfect. As the head chef at one of Los Angeles's most exclusive fine dining restaurants, I run the kitchen like a well-oiled machine. If I'm not there, things spiral into chaos. But tonight wasn't about the restaurant. Tonight was about Sophia. Things had been rocky between us lately. The long shifts, the late nights, I could feel the strain on our relationship. So for International Women's Day, I vowed to make things right. I planned the perfect evening, a meal made just for her. I spent the entire day crafting a menu straight from my heart, seared scallops, her favorite steak, and a rich, velvety chocolate mousse. The table was set with candles, roses, and the finest wine. Every detail carefully arranged to show her that, despite my demanding career, she was still my priority. But then she wasn't there. Instead of spending the evening with me, Sophia had gone hiking with her best friend, Ryan. On a night like this? It didn't sit right with me. Who chooses a wilderness trip over a romantic dinner? But I swallowed my frustration. Maybe she was trying to make a point, trying to remind me that she needed more from me than just one special night. She promised she'd be home by 7 p.m. But as the clock ticked forward, my anticipation turned to annoyance, then worry. And then the messages started. Mobile phone found something strange in the woods. I'll tell you about it when I get back. Something about her words made my stomach twist. And I had no idea this night was about to become my worst nightmare. By the time the clock hit 8:30 p.m., I had checked my phone at least 20 times. The meal I had spent all day perfecting was now getting cold. The candles on the table flickered, casting long shadows across the untouched plates. The wine sat in its glass, untouched. But the thing that truly unsettled me? Sophia still wasn't home. I told myself to be patient. Maybe the hike had taken longer than expected. Maybe she and Ryan had lost track of time. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. Then another message. Mobile phone, don't worry, heading back now. Just took longer than we thought. Relief washed over me, but it was brief. Something about her texts felt off. Short, vague, unlike her usual way of texting. And then there was the last thing she sent before that. Mobile phone found something strange in the woods. I stared at those words, trying to shake the unsettling feeling creeping up my spine. What did she find? Why wouldn't she just tell me? Then, as if the night couldn't get any worse, I saw it, a rat darting across the kitchen floor. Great. Just what I needed. We had been dealing with a minor pest problem, but now? Tonight of all nights? Annoyed, I grabbed a bat from the closet and went after it. The little thing was fast, slipping between furniture, dodging every swing. The chase led me into the dimly lit hallway, my footsteps echoing off the walls. The frustration in my chest boiled over, the tension of the night pushing me closer to snapping. And then silence. The rat disappeared, vanishing through a crack in the baseboard. Just like that, it was gone. I let out a breath, rubbing my temple. My head was pounding now, my nerves stretched thin. Between Sophia being late, her strange messages, and now this ridiculous chase, I was done with tonight. Mobile phone, Sophia, it's really late. Where are you? I sent the text, pacing the kitchen, trying to convince myself that everything was fine. Then finally, the front door unlocked. I turned toward it, relief ready to spill from my lips. But when Sophia stepped inside, something was wrong. As the front door swung open, a rush of cold air seeped into the apartment, chilling me to my core. Sophia stepped inside, but something was wrong. She stood there, motionless, her body half-shadowed in the dim entryway. The first thing I noticed was her posture, stiff, unnatural, like she wasn't fully in control of her movements. Her skin looked paler than usual, almost sickly under the warm glow of the apartment lights. Her hair, normally tied up after a long day, hung loosely over her face, strands sticking to her forehead like she had been sweating, or worse, like she had been running. But it was her eyes that unsettled me the most. Sophia's gaze felt vacant, like she was looking at me but not really seeing me. The usual warmth, the playfulness in them, gone. Hey, you okay? My voice came out softer than I expected. She blinked slowly, like she was trying to process the question. Then, shaking her head slightly, she took a few steps forward. Yeah, just tired. The hike was longer than expected. Her voice was different. Flat. Lacking emotion. I frowned. You didn't text me much. You said you found something weird in the woods. What was it? Sophia hesitated. For a moment, I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then, in an almost detached tone, she said it was nothing. Just a dead animal. I stared at her. That didn't add up. I knew Sophia, she had seen dead animals before. She wouldn't have sent a cryptic message over something so minor. And yet, as she stood there, shivering slightly, avoiding my eyes, I could tell as she was hiding something. Trying to shake the unease creeping into my chest, I gestured toward the table. I made dinner. Your favorites. You must be starving. She didn't move. Didn't even glance at the food. I'm not hungry. My brow furrowed. Not hungry? You haven't eaten all day. Sophia's lips parted like she was about to say something. But then she stopped. Her hands twitched at her sides, fingers curling and uncurling as if she were trying to suppress something. And that's when I noticed it, her breathing was off. Shallow. Uneven. Sophia, are you sure you're okay? She blinked again, slower this time. And then, in a voice just above a whisper, she said something that made my stomach twist into knots. It's so cold. I glanced at the thermostat. 72 degrees. But as I looked back at her, a shiver ran down my spine. Because suddenly, I felt it too. The chill in the air wasn't normal. It wasn't just a draft or a trick of my mind. It was deep, settling into my bones like something unnatural. I watched as Sophia stood in the middle of the room, unmoving. Her breathing was shallow, her gaze flickering toward the corners of the apartment like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. Then the lights flickered. Once. Twice. A long, slow dimming before returning to normal. I let out a nervous chuckle. Guess we need to check the wiring. Sophia didn't react. Instead, she turned her head slightly, her expression vacant, and whispered, "They don't like the light." A sharp shiver crawled up my spine. Who doesn't? I asked, forcing a laugh, trying to ground myself in reality. Her eyes, once warm and full of life, were empty. Her lips parted slightly, as if forming words, but no sound came out. Then, suddenly, the candles on the table blew out. No breeze. No open windows. Just darkness swallowing the room. Sophia exhaled slowly, her breath visible in the freezing air. Then, in a voice that wasn't hers, she muttered, "They're already here?" The air in the apartment grew thick, suffocating, pressing against my chest like an unseen weight. The flickering lights stretched twisted shadows across the walls, warping the familiar into something sinister. But the worst part, the thing that made my stomach turn, was Sophia. She stood in the middle of the room, rigid, unmoving, her shallow breaths the only sign that she was still alive. But something was wrong. Dark, intricate symbols began appearing on her skin, crawling up her arms and neck like burned-in markings, pulsating as if they were alive. My pulse quickened. This wasn't just exhaustion. This wasn't just Sophia acting strangely. This was something else. "Sophia, what's happening to you?" I whispered, barely able to speak. She lifted her head, her eyes were solid black. Then she moved, not like a person, not like her. It was too fast, too unnatural, like something was forcing her body to move. I stepped back in alarm, but she wasn't coming for me. A rat scurried across the floor. In a blur, Sophia lunged. Her fingers clamped down on the creature before it could escape. And before I could process what was happening, she sank her teeth into it. A sickening crunch. The sound of bones snapping, flesh tearing. Blood dripped from her mouth, staining her chin in dark, glistening streaks. I stumbled back, my stomach twisting in horror. "Jesus Christ, Sophia." My voice cracked. "What the hell are you doing?" She turned toward me slowly, her expression twisted in a cruel, unnatural smile. Then, in a voice that was both hers and something else, she whispered, "Round pushpin, Ryan is gone. I consumed him. That's why I wasn't hungry." My chest tightened. Ryan was dead? Round pushpin, I was chosen. A vessel for something greater, something ancient. She took a slow step forward. The markings on her body pulsed, twisting and shifting like something inside her was fighting to break free. Round pushpin, and now, Daniel, it's your turn. A surge of pure survival instinct took over. As she lunged, I grabbed the chef's knife from the counter. Her weight slammed into me, knocking us both to the ground. My grip tightened around the handle. Her fingers clawed at my arms, inhumanly strong, but I didn't hesitate. I drove the knife deep into her chest. A piercing, unnatural shriek filled the apartment. The temperature plummeted, the air crackling with energy I couldn't understand. Sophia's body convulsed, her fingers clawing at my arms, her face twisting in rage and agony. And then she went still. Silence. I gasped for breath, my hands shaking, my heart slamming against my ribs. She was gone. But then she vanished. No blood, no body, nothing. When the police arrived, they found me alone, shaking, still gripping the knife. They asked me where she was. I had no answer, because the truth was I didn't know. But as I sat there, staring at the empty space where she had fallen, a terrifying realization hit me. She wasn't gone, and whatever had taken her wasn't finished. I sat on the floor, knife still clutched in my trembling hands, staring at the empty space where Sophia had just been. No body, no blood, no sign she was ever here. The police didn't believe me. They searched the apartment, questioned me, but how could I explain what had just happened? That she wasn't herself? That something ancient, something evil had taken her? They left with suspicious glances, probably assuming I had lost my mind. But I knew the truth. Sophia was gone. Or at least, I thought she was. Because later that night, as I sat in the eerie silence of my apartment, trying to convince myself it was over, my phone buzzed. Mobile phone, unknown number. You can't kill what doesn't die. A sharp chill ran through me. My throat tightened. I wanted to believe it was a sick joke, a prank, but deep down I knew I hadn't stopped her. She was still out there. Maybe watching, maybe waiting. So now I have to ask you, Red Circle, if someone you loved came back, but they weren't the same, would you notice? Red Circle, would you trust your instincts, or would you brush it off as exhaustion, stress, just a bad day? Red Circle, and the scariest question of all. If it were you, would you even realize that something had taken your place?